Hi everyone, it's Pete here. Now doing jumps with these Arrma 3S and 4S trucks is all jolly good fun, but although these are strong, they aren't indestructible. One slightly weak point is these plastic shock towers and they can end up breaking. I'm going to show you a really cheap modification that you can do with only a few tools. I've done this with all my Arrma 3S cars and the shock towers haven't broken since. I recently bought an Arrma Outcast 4S and I'm going to do the same mod on that. What you'll need is a suitably sized piece of metal. I'm using this aluminium which is 40mm wide and 2mm thick. You'll need a file, a drill and something to cut the metal with like a hacksaw. It's also handy to have a little bench vise. First up you need to remove the screws that hold the tops of the shocks in place. Next you need to offer the metal up to the tower and from the back you can draw around it with a marker. Next cut out the shape. This is actually me doing one for my centre, but it's the same sort of thing. You want the plate to lie flush on the front of the tower, so cut off these little lugs with a hobby knife. You need to work out where the holes have got to go in the plate, so offer it up to the tower and then poke a drill through from the back and turn it around just to make a little mark on it so you can see where to drill. It's hard to see on camera, but there is a little mark there. I've drilled one side so I can hold that in place while I mark the other side. Now both sides are done, I'm going to hold this temporarily in place and mark some suitable positions for holes for the self-tapping screws that are going to hold this to the tower. These are 3mm holes for the 3mm self-tapping screws that I've got. Then I'm going to use a 2.5mm drill to put some pilot holes into the plastic. These self-tapping screws are spares from a Tamiya kit. Reattach the top of the shock and make sure the shock isn't binding with the plate when it moves. It's fair to say I didn't do a very tidy job on this one, but it is functional and that's the main thing. On this 4S car the rear shock tower's got this wing attached to it, so I need to get that off first. And the wheelie bar's in the way of two of the screws, so I need to get that off too. It's just these 4 screws to come out, which are 2.5mm hexes. These screws go right the way through to the rear body mount, so they'll come off too. Once that's off, it's all very similar to the front one. Now one little dilemma I did have was whether to use the screws that hold the wing on to also hold the metal plate on. The problem is that these holes are recessed and the wing's designed to plug into them. The other problem is that the metal I'm using isn't deep enough to cover all 4 of the wing screws. What I'm going to do is to make the plate narrower in the middle so it goes in between these screws and just put it on with self-tappers like with the front one. So I'm just working out what sort of shape this needs to be. Something a bit like that I reckon. Again, not the finest bit of metalworking that's ever happened, but it'll be under the body so I'm not too bothered. The rest of this is pretty much the same as the front one. For some reason on the back one here I marked the holes and then drilled them, I can't remember why. Again, just check that the plate isn't stopping the shocks from moving. Now just get the rest back together and you're good to go. It's worth saying it's better to do this mod on a tower that isn't broken already, but I did once do this on a broken tower which I super glued and then put the plate on and it did hold up until the new parts turned up. So there you go, very cheap and effective upgrade as long as you don't mind doing a bit of metal workery. If you found this helpful then please press the like button and maybe leave me a comment. Thank you ever so much for watching and I'll see you next time.